Hello, book club hosted by Heather Skinner. Happy Monday. Welcome to this exciting bonus video I get to share with you today. For the first part of this video, I had an exciting opportunity to speak with the Schoharie Library Writers Group, which if you got to hear our first interview of the month with our Book of the Month authors, Niamh Schmid and Rebecca Schmid. They wrote The Exiled of Shade and Shadow, Book 1 of A Daughter's Ransom, that we're reading for our November 2021 Book of the Month. In our beginning of the month interview, they told us a little bit more about how they were right at the beginning of founding that group. And we got to talk a little bit about the success of authors that are loving what they do and have published works now, just like Niamh and Rebecca. So they gave some of their time before a writers group meeting, which I really appreciate. And then also the second half of this video is another wonderful, exciting opportunity. I got to speak with directors, event planners, librarians in my local area. And most of them also gave time at work at the libraries. So I appreciate the time that everybody gave for these interviews and for the member questions that have been submitted for libraries since as far back as April. That I got to ask today. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe while you're here. It means so much to me and lets me know you like these kinds of videos. And it also allows you to be notified when our videos post, so you don't miss any exciting book club interviews, reviews, or information.
I'm Niamh Schmid, and I co-write with Rebecca, my sister-in-law. And I've been attending this as long as it's been around, for those who saw the interview.
And then Rebecca, do you want to go ahead and say hello next?
Sure. I have kind of nothing to say differently from Niamh, except that my name is not Niamh, it is Rebecca. But I've also been around as long as this thing has been running.
That is great. And then I will hand it over to John and just everyone when you introduce yourselves. I'd love if you could let us know what you work on in the writers group, if you have published works, and if you do, where we can find you. And if you haven't got published works, it's kind of fun if there's another place we can find you that you put yourself out there that we can follow. I love kind of seeing the writer's journey, and I think a lot of readers do too. So I can't wait to hear about what everybody's working on.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, this is John Mullins, but I write under a pen name, Jack Nanook. I do have one book published, Parabellum, that Heather's kind enough to hike up there for us. If you'd like a copy of that, just check out jacknanook.com. That's JACKNANUQ.com. Anyways, I'm remarkably fortunate to be the facilitator for this group and have held that unofficial role for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. It started with Allison Montione, and we'll meet her in a minute. She's over in, I don't know how this looks to everybody else, but she's on the left corner of my screen. So when I came as a member, Allison was the facilitator then, and she had the good fortune to go into grad school in Wales. And she looked at me and said, "Hot potato, it's yours." So, prior to COVID, obviously we met in person at the Schoharie Free Library, and we met every other Monday. Since COVID, we've obviously been able to do Zoom meetings. We've increased the meetings to every Monday night. So anybody's welcome to sign on, whether you're published or not, or you just kind of dabble with writing or just want to know about us. And again, because of COVID and because we're now meeting via Zoom, we've been able to add some members from outside the area. Catherine's one of them. She's from Sharon Springs. And we have at least, we have an author, a published author from the Boston area, and I think at least one from Florida. Oh, and we also have one that signs on periodically from Arizona, Jerry. So I'm going to turn this over to Allison Montione. And again, she was in charge of the group when I joined as a Lilly member. But sitting next to Allison is her mother, Jenny. And Jenny also actually is a paid employee of the library. And she does the Zoom portion of this. I'm not a techie. And Jenny does a great job. So actually, Heather, do you want me to turn this over to each person, or do you want me to introduce everybody that's on screen currently?
I love what you did. You can go ahead and like kind of give them that intro and turn it over one by one so we don't miss anybody.
Okay, I'm going to introduce everybody just in case we lose a connection or something. We've met Rebecca Schmid. We've also met Niamh, and her first name is not spelled anything like it's pronounced. And I believe that's Welsh also. Am I correct? Just give me a thumb up.
Gaelic, close.
Gaelic. Okay, all right. And then we have Noreen, and Noreen joined us about a year ago or so. Okay, and Noreen's done some stuff, and she and her husband have a nice horse farm. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also have Catherine Prada, who works at the Oneonta Library, and she is kind of a kid wrangler there and does some kid programs. So, all right. So I'm going to return it to Allison. Hot potato, it's yours.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Montione. I was a facilitator of the writing club. Let me see, that was 2015, I think, when I started. And then, as John said, I turned it over to him in 2017 when I went off to grad school. I'm currently working on a fantasy novel. And it's one of those things where I was working on it a little bit prior to writing club, but I've now like finished the first draft, and I definitely would not have accomplished that without the support of everybody in writing club, and being the facilitator and then a member of the writing club has really made me some great friends. So it's been a wonderful experience and continues to be.
So I guess since I'm right here, I'll talk next. So I dabble in writing, and it's really fun to hear what everybody else is working on. I get inspired. I write a lot more than I would if I did not have the writing club. And one thing that I really love about this club is that everybody reads, everybody takes turns, and everyone is very considerate about how much time they spend. So it depends on if somebody's got something really hot that everybody wants to hear more, great. But in general, everybody keeps it to a long enough amount of time that we can get a sense of what they're writing about, but a short enough amount of time that everyone, or almost everyone, if we have a big group, but most people do get a chance to read if they want to. And then everyone takes some time to give feedback, and it is all in a positive way, even if some of the feedback needs to be a little more of a critique than just saying, wow, this was great. Because wow, this was great is really gratifying, but it doesn't help you get better as a writer. So something I appreciate about this group is that in a kind and tactful way, people can make suggestions or let you know if there's something that doesn't make sense in what you're writing, or if you repeated one word 3 or 4 times in one paragraph and it wasn't just and. So anyway, so that's something I appreciate about this group, and I really love hosting it, and I feel like this is kind of part of my family now.
And I do just want to give a quick shout out. John mentioned this already, but when the pandemic hit, it was within a week or 2
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah, we didn't miss any writing clubs.
We didn't miss any writing clubs. Mom's the program director at the Schoharie Library, and she immediately figured out how to transition our group onto Zoom. She, managed the scheduling. She manages the reminder emails and the links and all of that. And it's amazing in a period where a lot of clubs and activities, either were shut down or entirely or lost members. We've actually grown exponentially. So I wanted to give kudos to you for keeping this going and for providing the Zoom platform, because that's been really beneficial.
Well, thank you. And I have to say, my pleasure. It just felt way too important to let it fall by the wayside. And another thing I have to say, that as a program director, the writing club really inspires me to do literary programming. Tomorrow we have a workshop, a writing workshop on writing with resilience and creativity. And it's about expressive writing to help process emotions through your writing, and also become better at emoting your characters, shall we say, writing your characters' emotions. And we've had some other writing workshops and a writing conference and things like that. And these are things that I don't think I would have felt pushed and stretched to do if it wasn't for writing clubs. So I feel like our library programming is more interesting and lively because of writing club. And of course, it's great having Meet the Author days. So that's super fun. Big benefit. So I'll pass it on to somebody else now.
I definitely want to jump in and add to that shout out that Allison gave you, because honestly, I was working at the library at the time too as the storytime educator, and you jumped right into Zoom, and I was like frightened of it. I'm like, I'm not ready for this. I don't know. I read a book. I don't know. I think if you hadn't, gotten me into this world of Zoom, probably this book club wouldn't be here. So you're a big part of this too. So I'm really glad that you get to be here today.
Thank you. Well, you did a fabulous job, I have to say, with the story time, and I'm really excited that you've expanded into the book group.
Thank you.
Heather, I'd like to pipe in one more time. For those that are get a chance to watch this later or for wherever, I want to point out that Jenny has done a fantastic job. And to give you guys perspective, Schoharie is located in a small rural town of about 3,500 people. So there's not a large budget. We're fortunate to have some great talent and great motivated people working for the library system here. But I just want to point out that if anyone's watching this from the sticks or wherever, you too could have a writing group. And if there's not one in your area, go ahead and start it up. Find a spot and start it up. So.
And libraries love writing groups. We are so excited when people want to do things like that in our libraries. And so don't be shy about asking your local library if you can meet there, and they may even like to help you promote the writing group and grow it and bring in facilitators to help with it or do events or whatever. So definitely, this is what libraries are all about. So make use of it.
I love all of that. And I want to hear the rest of the intros, and then I'm going to have questions too about that I think will help others that might want to start a writing group, or maybe are not sure about how to join one, or what that entails. So I can't wait to lead into more of that information just a little bit. So if we want, let's see, we still haven't heard from Catherine and Noreen. If you want to give your introductions so we can hear a little more about you.
Sure, I'll keep this quick and short. But as John said, I am the kid wrangler at the Huntington Memorial Library in Oneonta. I think my real title is youth librarian out there, but who knows anymore. I really do understand the plight that Jenny went through getting on Zoom. So even though I wasn't there for this going on Zoom in the beginning, I feel like I could be. And but yeah, I joined about this past March, my grandmother found it in the local My Shopper, and she was like, "Hey, you enjoy writing. Why don't you go to this?" And I had pretty bad writing group experiences in the past. It was either really prompt heavy, or when you were looking for feedback, they would give you feedback, but it didn't really help. I mean, I know that's probably individual, but I have to say the group members, and this being a read what you wrote type of group instead of a prompt writing group, has been very helpful for me in my writing. And I've really appreciated all the good feedback, all the constructive feedback. And yeah, I'm definitely going to, I don't get to join in on these Friday ones often, but I am looking forward to every Monday. It's my favorite part of the week. So yeah, so thank you for coming into my life.
Catherine, could you tell us what you're working on?
Sure, yeah. Right now I'm working on a dystopian type war novel told from the perspective of three friends. And with this group's help, I was able to write the first part, which is much farther than I've ever gotten before in my writing. I would often jump from idea to idea and never get anywhere, but I can say I'm 150 pages in, and I'm really excited about that. So, and I'm on to the next part now. So thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome. I loved hearing about what you've gotten to accomplish coming in, because I've been to writers group meetings here in the past, but I haven't gotten to make any recently. So it's really great to see people coming in and what you guys have been up to. Noreen, I'd love to hear your introduction.
Well, for many, many years, I've worked with preschoolers. So I am in a different venue. I write children's books, children's picture books. And I tried publishing a few years ago when my kids were younger, and now I'm back at it again. I've wanted to join this group for a number of years, but I always chickened out because I thought my work just didn't really, I don't know, I chickened out. And one day I was in the library in Schoharie, and they said, "You really need to join, and this is how you do it." And I did, so I joined it. It's helped me tremendously. I love my children's stories. They've given me great ideas. I think I have enough books for a series now, so I'm very, very excited. It's built my confidence. It's helped me understand how to use language and create relationships and ideas, and it's been a great blessing.
Oh, I love that. This is so great. And something that I'm noticing too, as I listen to all of your intros, you're all writing different things, different genres, and I love that. So I know not all writers groups are structured that way. Some are just fantasy writers, some are just children's book authors. So can you tell a little bit more, whoever wants to jump in, what that entails, what that is like, mixing genres and critiquing for each other?
Well, I think I know, at least from my perspective, even though I write so predominantly sci-fi, fantasy, or steampunk, I like reading these other kinds of genres. So it's nice because it's almost like reading them, but instead I'm listening to them. So it's kind of nice, especially if you're sunk deep in the fantasy trenches or whatever genre you're writing, to get a break and be able to hear something else that's outside of that box.
I think it's very educational to kind of listen to all these different genres. And when the group started, I mean, it was me and Becca and Niamh and our friend Heather, who's not here today, and a couple other people, but we were all pretty much writing fantasy. And then John showed up with his like action thriller spy novel, and we all loved it. It was great. And he's not really a huge fan of fantasy, but he, gave good critique on our writing. And one of the things that I really wanted to make sure of, and John has continued, is we really wanted people to feel welcome no matter what they were writing. And I mean, we've had people come and read poetry as well. And so, yeah, I think that getting exposed to all those different genres is really nice. And I think we all learn from each other. And we also all have sort of personal experience in a lot of different areas. So we'll regularly say like, oh, like, hey, John, like, you know, I have a police officer in my thing. Can you give me some insight on that? Or, you know, hey, Becca, I'm doing some archery in mine. Can you tell me if this sounds right? So we all kind of have different things that we're really interested in and different sort of experiences that also we can kind of get help from each other on various topics. So that's really fun.
I really love that can be a strength of mixing genres in a writer's critique group. And I love that that's what you do. And I noticed Sabrina just came in. So if you want to take a second to introduce yourself and say hello and talk about what you're writing, I would love for you to. Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I wasn't sure what time. Well, I'm late, first of
That's
all.
okay.
I had to completely move things in my apartment around, but I'm here. Hi. So I'm Sabrina S.C. Attwell, as I go by. It's my pen name. And I am currently writing. I'm trying to write book 3 of my series, which is very slow. And I'm also writing a pirate story that I started working on for this writing club. And that's pretty much it. So nice to meet you.
Sabrina, do you want to say the name of your series? And
oh, sure. I'm not sure where it is, but it's called Aestus. It's Aestus. It's Latin for turmoil / burning heat, both of which apply to the book.
Oh, that's fantastic. And can people look you up on and find that series on Amazon? Is that published?
Yeah, so the first 2 are published. I strongly recommend only looking up the first one because the second one spoils the plot. It's over there. But anyway, it's basically the series is about an underground city about 300-400 years in the future, where much of humanity has retreated underground to deal with climate change, and finding out what is actually, I'm trying to think how to not spoil this. So yes, please look it up and don't allow me.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And it's perfect timing. We've only asked one question really so far. We've been getting intros and kind of talking, so it's okay. And that was going to lead me into my next question too. So I've kind of alluded to the structure of your group. So I really love the way that you work it. You really do your best to give everyone a chance. You were talking already about, being mindful of time so that everybody has a chance. So what was that like, figuring out the structure for people who might be looking to make their own writers groups?
So when the group started, it was actually I'd say it was kind of a prompt-based group, right? The facilitator before me would kind of have prompts that or exercises that the group would do. And I didn't really want to do that because I was writing my book, and I knew that Niamh and Becca were both writing books, and Heather was writing a book, and it just seemed like, why are we, trying to make up new things all the time when we can instead help each other with what we really want to work on. And I had just graduated college and was very used to taking classes with the critique format, where you say something positive, you say something that someone could improve, and you just kind of go around the room and everybody says something. So, I asked the group at the time if they would want to try that, and they did. So we've kind of been doing that ever since.
One thing that I think helps is often early in the meeting, John or sometimes Allison, I facilitate if he's not available, but whoever is facilitating will ask who has something to read, or we will just go around, like John usually will go around and ask each person, do you have something tonight? So then we know how many people we have to fit into the 2 hours, and you can kind of do the math and figure out, how to work it.
I love that. And for when you're listening too, everyone does seem to give some kind of critique after, which I love too. Everybody, really listens, and they have something to say after. So what is the best thing? I know maybe some people might be nervous about going to critique groups, not sure what to say, to be helpful. I know when I go, I feel like I'm just always in awe of everybody's writing, and I'm like, that was great. And I'm always like, oh man, I wasn't helpful. Wait a minute, I should think like, because they need advice too, they need help. You know, they want to make sure, you know, if there's advice to give. So how do you guys, what do you listen for when you're listening to a story to give helpful advice?
One thing I'd like
Oh,
to
go
say is that everybody comes at that a little bit differently, and so that makes it a very rich experience. You know, someone will hear the character development and be able to speak to that. Someone will hear the plot development, speak to that. I personally have a piece of paper and pencil, and I'm always jotting down things that just strike me, particularly how people use their words and the images they create and the sensations and the feelings that I'm getting as I'm listening. So I try to do that. And then others are really great at being able to say, hey, did you think about this? Or well, what do you think about this idea? So it's really interesting. Everybody brings a little bit different piece to that.
I think to sort of add to Noreen's point, like everybody's got sort of their own thing. You'll figure that out as you go, and critique can be a skill in of itself. The more you hear people's work and the more you learn to give feedback, the more you can look at your own and go, oh yeah, you know what, this could be better. And this happens all the time where you'll write something and like we've been in this group so long and be like, oh, Allison would definitely say this at this part, or John would pick on this fact, or so it kind of all goes into your own writing. But even if you're starting off and you don't know what to say, like just give your reaction. Like that can be helpful to an author too. Like, how is their work being perceived? So even if you don't know, and you've never done it before, you could still be helpful, still go be part of a group. It's worth it.
I agree.
I'll echo that because again, we as writers, and we call this the writing group, but in many ways it's more of a critique group because we're sending stuff out to the group and we want some feedback because again, the group may or may not represent our potential readers. So if it appeals to our group, and if our group is honest with us, I like this, I don't like this, maybe use this word instead, maybe flip this sentence around, etc. And at least with this group, we're fortunate nobody has inflated egos. So when we offer suggestions, and that's all it is, because some suggestions I'll take, some suggestions I'll tweak, and some suggestions I'll completely ignore because I don't think it's right for that part of the book. And again, so it's all up to the author, but the author is also trying to reach the public. And so if the writers group, hopefully the writers group is a microcosm of whoever you're trying to reach. Hopefully as the author, we're taking some of that in healthy doses, I guess. So, you know, again, we call it the writers group, but we've already written before we get to the group. So it's really more of a critique group.
And I would also say, you know, in terms of advice for critique, I think taking notes, as Noreen mentioned, is really, really helpful. And as you're listening, just note down like, oh, this was a cool way to phrase this, or oh, I like this character, or I didn't understand that, or you know, this phrase kind of hit my ear in an awkward way. And I think, yeah, so I think taking notes is really helpful for doing helpful critique. And as John said, you kind of have to leave your ego at the door, both as a writer and a critiquer, because as a writer, you know, you have to be able to listen to those suggestions and sort of weigh them fairly to decide whether or not you're going to take them or not. But also, you know, if you make a suggestion to somebody and they go, you know, that actually doesn't fit in with my sort of grand plan for the story, you kind of have to be like, okay, it's your story, you know. And sometimes, you know, I think people talk a lot about that writers need to let go of their ego, but sometimes critiquers have to let go as well.
I love the points you bring up too, because there's different kinds of editors out there, and this is something we also spoke about in your first interview this month with Rebecca and Niamh. We'll see Allison's, if you look in the beginning. Allison, who's here, her name is in the beginning of this book because she's one of the editors. So I love that there's different kinds of editors. There's like line editors looking for those words or something that doesn't sound right. There's editors looking for character development, plot holes. When you're in the writers group, are you all reading different drafts? Like maybe someone's on a first draft and might have more line editing to look for, and then versus maybe someone's on a third draft and looking more for plot. How does that differ when you're in the group?
I know at least I have read both like first drafts as well as like third and fourth drafts. We've had several people that will read the same thing through multiple drafts. So for instance, short story that they've revised, so they'll go back after reading it the first week, kind of revise it, look at the comments, decide what they liked, change it, come back and read it again. So that's always really cool also to see the process from week to week when people bring back the same stuff.
Well, I was very fortunate in a way, talk about egos. I had brought a story, had gotten some critique. I took the critique to a whole new story, and everybody said, well, what about the first story? And so then I ended up going back to the first story. I ended up, long story short, with 2 stories now, and one of which I'm going to read tonight. I hope I'll get a chance to. But so it was one of the best experiences I ever had, taking the critiquing, making that happen, finding so much nuggets in that I was able to develop 2 stories. So it was great.
I love that. And you reminded me of time too, because I want to make sure you guys are so gracious to give part of your meeting today to do this interview as I throw a pen. So what I wanted to end with was the last question. If you all want to just let us know what writers group has helped you the most with, what it really means to you, how they can be helpful.
Publishing, finishing. Seriously though, I would not have completed my novel had it not been for this writer/critique group. Because as I've said to others, because we meet, even when we were only meeting twice a month, I would be able to get feedback relatively quickly. So I could make changes or I'd get motivation to continue on. And I would take notes based on the input I was getting. So again, if people are watching this, if they're not part of a writer or a critique group, I strongly encourage you to join one. Or again, if there's not one in your area, start one.
And before we move on to the next person, I do want to, John, while you were talking, I wanted to make sure you got the information in. You were telling me earlier about the sale of your book right now and the taekwondo, and I would love if you want to just mention that. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still.
No,
you're
that's
muted.
fine.
There you go.
Just briefly, in addition to writing, I also teach and study taekwondo. And I have a group of students I'm associated with that will be competing on a national level in July. So to support them, I'm pushing my book, and then a portion of those proceeds between now and the first of the year will go to support that. And again, I'll probably be doing something similar next year. So if you see this, again, taekwondo is very important to me. And I do a lot to support my students. So feel free to purchase a copy. I would appreciate it. They would appreciate it. And Heather and I appreciate you helping me promote that.
Thank you. And I would definitely love whoever wants to jump in next. What's it meant to you, and what's the most helpful thing about writers group for you?
I just wanted to add, and I think this is possibly answering all of your questions all at the same time, which is that kind of I synthesize stuff. For me, so I'd only ever taken one writing class prior to this, or a writing group type thing. And that was a class, and it was short stories. It felt very high pressure. I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest, etc. And this group, I feel it's less pressure. I've learned to be a writer and a reader at the same time, both as a critiquer and as I'm reading my work aloud, which is a very interesting process because, you have a variety of people who all have different interests. As Becca was saying, you do start to get a sense of what people might find interesting or like, but it's really interesting to read your own work aloud, which is of course its own fun experience. And you start to think, oh, how might this come across to people? So you're thinking from the actual writing angle, you're thinking from the how are people taking this angle, from the publishing angle, et cetera, all at once. And then when you're also critiquing people, it's almost like writing and editing at the same time. It's like you have both perspectives in your mind at the same time. So that for me has been a very interesting experience. And as John was saying, it's been very valuable just in terms of pushing yourself toward whatever goal you're going for.
I think I'll jump in. Probably, well, one of the biggest things that I would say both Beck and I have gotten out of writing club is Allison as a editor. So definitely could not have done it without her. And so it's really cool that she's been able to do this process with us. And I don't think it would have been possible without her critique and support and helping for the period of time when she facilitated the writing club. I'd also say I don't think any of these books would exist without this writing club, because we mentioned in our interview, NaNoWriMo is what finished our first book, well, book 2, but the first book any of us had ever finished. But first of all, we never would have even known NaNoWriMo existed without the writing club. I think it was our other friend, Heather, not Heather Skinner, but that brought it up once in writing club. And so it was like, oh, let's try it. And then we read a lot of book 1 in writing club when we first started writing it, and everyone was so interested in it that it really was what helped us keep going, even when we had a lapse. And I don't think we would have been able to get to the end without everyone's support and enthusiasm.
Yeah, to further Niamh's point, I, as a class A introvert, would have gladly written an entire book series and sat on it by myself and never shown it to anybody. So I feel like reading your stuff and having people express interest is just sort of still mind-boggling to me. And that really keeps me putting it out there. Otherwise, I would kind of just write in my little corner and that would be it. But
I'll jump in. So I'm 27 now, but I've been writing since I was 10, and not in any of those years have I ever finished anything or gotten even close. Even short stories were hard for me to get through. But I loved writing, and I still do. And to be so far in a story that I have rewritten over the years several times has been such a amazing feat for me, and I definitely wouldn't have gotten that far if I haven't been joining in it every Monday since March. So, and it's definitely looking like I'm gonna finish it, which is really exciting. And even if I just keep it for myself, that's really all I wanted. And this has been such a positive experience for me and a wonderful group. And every member brings their own perspective and their own type of critique, like you said earlier. And it's really great. Like I said, it's a war story, so that I'm writing right now. I have no idea. The first part through the one character's eyes was super easy. It was kind of made up. The second part of the story where the war really comes in, I'm like, I don't actually know how to do this stuff. And I asked the writing group, and they gave me great feedback. I emailed John back and forth a few times, and he gave me wonderful feedback, YouTube videos, things to read, and it's been really wonderful. And John's visited me at the library a few times, and we just talked about it. And it's just been such a wonderful experience for me. So yeah, like I said earlier, I'm really excited that this group came into my life, and hopefully I can keep on track and I can get this written, because I'm a deadline person. So having Monday, it like really gives me like, I really should at least write a couple of pages before Monday. So to feel like I did something within the week. So yeah.
What are you doing?
Heather, I want to reach out again to anybody who's watching this. None of us are classically trained. None of us are English majors. When I was in high school,
Except for Allison. Allison went to
okay, I'm sorry then, Allison.
I'm a professor, John.
I'm sorry. I thought you were a history major. Okay.
I am a science writer, but anyway.
Matter. I love your point. Keep going.
Okay. But again, I encourage anybody to write. If you could write a letter or you could write an email, you can write a story, and from a short story, you can go to a novel, or you can go to a compilation of short stories. So again, Allison, I apologize, but I have a size 10 mouth because I put my foot in it all the time.
You're totally fine. It's fun.
It was a very good point.
I'm just amused.
So, and I want to point out, we have, again, we don't have the full group signed on tonight.
Yeah.
But we have a writer, Chris Kiefer, who actually has 3 finished books. And one of them is a fantasy. The other 2 are kind of historical novels from about 100 years ago. And she just signed a contract to write a 3rd one as part of that series. So, again, she's not classically trained. She used to write a weekly newspaper article, column. And then we have others, again, that have not signed on, and I wish they had, because this is a very rich and diverse group. And, again, for a small rural area where, money and finances are tight, we're fortunate. We have a very, very diverse group here.
Oops, Heather, you're muted.
Thank you. Are Chris's first 2 books published? Is that something that the members watching can find?
No, they're in the works. She has a contract with a publisher, but I think the first one, when did she say?
July, I think.
July.
It's due out.
Next year it'll be out.
Okay, so that's something we can keep our eyes on too.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah.
Great. And did anyone else want to add anything else? I don't think we've heard from Jenny and Allison and Noreen, just like your favorite things, what writing group has helped you the most with?
So I would just like to say that what is in a writer's head does not always make it out onto the page. And that is where a writing group really helps, because they can show us what was supposed to get on there that we didn't put down, but the story is so strongly playing in our head that when we read it, we don't notice that all that stuff isn't there. And John is really great about keeping us honest with background details like smells, that often we will forget to mention the smell of something, but in real life, smell is a super important part of our experience, and it's something that triggers memory and helps us to really process a whole situation. So that is something that I really appreciate about this writing group, is that it keeps me honest. It fills in the gaps. It tells me when I have skipped over or glossed over something that needed some more attention and detail. And also when I yammered on too long about something that wasn't interesting or important to people. So I can cut that out and add more here, and it's a better experience. And even if, I may never publish anything, but just for my own satisfaction or the fun of anybody who I might share it with, it's just really helpful. And I think it helps when you hear someone critiquing that in someone else's work, it makes you look at your own work again too and realize, oh, I forgot to put anything about smell in here, or oh, I went on a really long time about something super insignificant, or oh, I completely forgot to mention that they exited that room and now they're actually in a drafty corridor, you know, like two floors away, you know, and everybody's shaking their head because they don't know how my characters got there, you know. So this is the kind of thing that writing group really helps with.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, I mean, I've become my writing has improved tremendously from being in this group. And I mean, you know, I was a writing major, but I think this group has helped me a lot more than the writing classes I took, just because I think there's more diversity of opinion and experience, and also none of us are trying to impress each other, you know, we're just sharing for the joy of writing, which I think is really important. But also, you know, from the other side of it, I have so loved getting to hear all of these unique stories and getting to know so many different characters, you know, getting to hear all these different writing styles and think about things that I might not necessarily have thought about, and sort of go on these imaginative journeys through each person's stories. And even when, you know, I'm too busy to write myself, it's still just so wonderful to just show up and listen, and hear all the stories. So that's something that I really, really enjoy.
Yes, it reminds me a little bit of the days when you would listen to the radio, you know, in a way, and listening to stories being read out loud. And writing can be very solitary and you know, and very quiet. So being able to read it out loud, as we were talking earlier, and hearing your own voice and your own words, and then hearing others, it just has such a wonderful sense of companionship in what would otherwise be kind of a lonely thing. So I love it, and I'm thrilled. So
I loved all of that, and I can attest to a lot of the same things you're saying. I know, like I said, I haven't been able to make it to writers groups recently, but I'm actually working on another draft during NaNoWriMo of something I was reading however long it's been since. So I kind of scrapped what I've read before, but I still actually have you guys in my head. Like there are things that I remember you critiquing, like, wouldn't she have been scared there? Like, where is the emotion? It's like, yeah, no, okay. And I still think of that when I'm writing, which I think is a great tool, because now you're almost kind of editing as you go a little bit. Like, it's something maybe you might have forgotten and had to go back and heard a critique. So even if you don't get to make every meeting, I really appreciate all that you guys have to offer and what a writing group can do. Even in that, like you were saying, Noreen, it's very solitary, and this really does bring group and community in such an important way. So I really, 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 really appreciate you all being here for this interview. This has been fantastic, and thank you again for supporting each other the way you support each other. I love this. And this is our book of the month in book club, hosted by Heather Skinner, of Shade and Shadow, book 1 of A Daughter's Ransom. And I'll hold up Parabellum one more time under the pen name Jack Nanuck. Did I pronounce that correctly? Nanuck? Okay. So thank you all again so much. This has been just an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and have fun at your writers meeting after. Thank you for giving time from that.
Thank you for making this.
Thank you, Heather.
Good morning. My name is Helen Thomas, and I'm the director at Sharon Springs Free Library, where we are all about reading and writing. The two are obviously intimately connected. In addition to regular library stuff, we like to promote writing. We have a short story writing workshop coming up. If you haven't seen this poster, it's in the libraries. We had one session before. We have another one on November 20th at 9:30 a.m. And I have to tell you, I participated in the last session, Dr. Bellflower, from Siena College was fantastic. And it's not so much about short story, although perhaps that's the framework he's using, but it was a lot about conflict and character development. And he'd have us write little things, and his feedback was phenomenal. So what I would encourage anybody who does any kind of writing to come Saturday, November 20th, 9:30 to 11:30. I will be here overseeing, but I think I'm not going to participate this time because I want to help other people have time to review the writing. I do write. I've probably been writing since I could write. I had one very big success on one very small book, and that's it. It's called How to Have a Perfect Christmas. I was published by Dutton in 1996, and I had a huge advance. And what happened after that is an interesting and very disappointing story. So if anybody wants to hear it, come on around, and I'd be happy to share it over a coffee or a glass of wine with anybody else who likes to write and has aspirations to publish. Some people say writing without publishing is like acting without an audience. I don't believe that. And certainly the session we had this past weekend, writing can be healing, it can be distracting, it can be meditative. There's so much about writing that is beneficial. And recently I was in one meeting where somebody said, think of your writing as a gift to the world. What is it that you are writing? What is your gift that you are giving to the world? So that's another nice way to think about writing. So I think that's all I have to say, unless anybody wants to ask me a question. Come see us.
Fantastic. Oh my God, I loved all that. And Terry, I would love you to give your introduction next.
Okay, well, my name is Terry Pavoldi, and I'm the director of the Middleburg Library out here in Schoharie County. We're a small rural library. My favorite books of all time, being a children's librarian, are probably the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling and the Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I mean, that's where my heart is. I don't read a lot of adult literature. I read mostly children's literature. And if I read an adult book, it's probably nonfiction. But I am not a writer, other than writing some poetry. I've never written anything longer than a grocery list. But we used to have a writing group here, but it has gone now. So I really am trying to think of how to get it started again. That's it.
Thank you, Terry. So glad to have you all here. And Jenny, you're up next.
Yay.
Hi, I'm Jenny Mosher. I'm the program director of the Schoharie Library, and in case you couldn't guess, that is also in Schoharie County. So one of the things that I do is host a Zoom writing club. This group has been going on for many years before I got involved with it. And I can't even tell you how many, but probably at least 10, founded by a couple of homeschooling teenagers and their mom. So, and those homeschooling teenagers are still members, and they have just published their second book in a series, and they're about to publish their third pretty soon. Yeah. And so their book is actually being hosted by Heather's book club right now. So that's pretty exciting. And I want to give a shout out also to our wonderful director, Yvonne Keller-Baker, who is just tremendously supportive of all of our programs and groups. So I have so many favorite books. Where do I even start? Of course, I love Jane Austen. I love Anne of Green Gables, and Jenny Colgan and Lord of the Rings and all that. And one that I really have been enjoying is Threading the Needle by Marie Bostwick. And it's a series about quilters. And she actually has a bunch of books that feature quilting and also redemption and people going through adversity and bonding together and connecting in ways and developing as humans. And I love that type of story. Let's see. And I do write. I have not published anything, but I do like to write. And we just had a writing workshop this weekend that Helen alluded to about expressive writing, which is a way of helping to kind of process some of the difficult situations and conundrums that we face, and is really, really helpful to learn how writing can help you with that, and how you can look at different perspectives and different facets of what's going on in order to cope better with a situation, and also learn how to develop your own characters as a writer. So things like that are just so wonderful and helpful. I feel like writing does help us develop as humans, as well as just, you know, for recreation.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And Kim, I see you came in perfect timing. If you'd like to unmute, we're doing introductions right now, so you can let us know the library you're from, your title there, if you have any favorite books or authors you'd like to mention, if you also write, and any other employee or library shout outs you'd like to give.
Good morning. Sorry I'm a little late. I am from the community library in Cobleskill. I'm the library director. We recently have 2 new employees, or relatively new employees, for adult services, Don LaPlante, and for youth services, we have Julia Brandel, and they've both started in the past year. And they both have been talking about creating writing groups. Cobleskill has had a writing group, but their membership has been dwindling over the past, I'd say definitely since the pandemic, but even so, coming back, the group has been diminishing. So they are looking at trying to create something new. There's also some conversations about creating a teen group for writing. So we'll see how those all pan out with. We're also working on some grant applications, so some of that will be tied to that work. So I do not write for fun. Most of my writing is work related, or grant writing and stuff like that. The authors that I tend to be more interested in have to do with nonfiction. My undergrad degree is environmental science and focusing on biology, so I tend to gravitate towards that, as well as leadership type books, trying to always improve my own abilities. So, but I, there's always those interesting new fiction books that pop up that catch your eye, and you always want to try to grab those. I tend to do a lot more audiobook and listen to those in the car. But my nonfiction, I can't do that by audiobook. I have to actually read, because I just can't focus on all the details. So was there anything else, or does that pretty much cover?
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Kim. I'm happy to have you here with all of us. And I think I'm going to get right into my first question that I wanted to bring up before we get into some awesome member questions that we have, because in my book club, my members just love libraries, and they're going to be so excited to be able to get their questions asked and to hear what we have to talk about. So I first wanted to bring up, which is something that's pretty cool, seeing we have all of you here from different libraries. A lot of libraries, you all have your own system, how you run things. So the questions that I'm going to ask for the members, are there anything like rules or regulations across the board that are the same, or how are those chosen?
Are they the same, Kim and Helen?
Well, I would say the things that are controlled by the library system. But when it comes to really the operation of the library, it's between the directors and the board of trustees. And some of those may be similar. I mean, we do share a lot of policies amongst all of us, but I think really each library is given the ability to kind of run and operate on their own.
And I think it's really interesting because I know a lot of people in my book club, they're from all over, like different states, you know, even out of the county, some in the county. So I know, like, keeping in mind too with some of your answers, if you can say maybe a different way that might happen in another place, if something might be really different or if it might be the same. Because I know one of my first questions is from our member Karen Piper Carr, and she wanted to know, how do libraries choose to stock the books that you stock?
Well, I can tell you how I do it. I look at different review sources. Our fulfillment company is Ingram, and so they have a lot of lists, and you know, you look every month to see what's coming up and what the most popular authors are. But since those are not the things I read, I make sure that I look at other sources, because I buy all the things that I know everybody is looking for. And then I try and search out like what I call more literary or indie authors. And I try every month to buy a couple of things that probably the other libraries don't. You know, and it's really subjective. What you order when you're doing that. It's kind of those are the books that sort of appeal to me, and I order them. I don't know what Kim does.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, like, if you have different processes, just to kind of give the members an idea to see how different it can be where they are or in other places. And if it's pretty similar, that's okay too. Because that actually, what you said, oh, did you have something to add, Kim?
I was just going to say that we have been changing things a little bit in the way we order. We've actually been looking at the requests within the system, and if there's a title that a lot of people are really interested in, we've been buying a second copy to make sure that our patrons have a copy of it, and then one that can circulate throughout the system. Like Terry, we use a lot of the guides that are available to us. We also use Ingram, and Ingram has a lot of recommendations of, you know, very popular titles. So you can kind of look outside, you know, your area of expertise or your area of interest and find other titles. The other thing too is that Ingram allows you to search like for nonfiction by Dewey number. So if you're weeding a certain portion of your collection, you can go in and find new titles in that Dewey area. So I used to do most of the ordering, and now that I have 2 librarians that have focus areas, I've really turned a lot of that over to them. Unless I see something that, you know, is really important to me or something that I'm interested in, then I will add it or request that they add it. You know, usually they will also vet my my selections and make sure that it's something that they feel we should add to the collection.
Mine's totally different. I was going to speak up, but I was muted, so I got lost for a bit there. I look at the Baker and Taylor. We use Baker and Taylor. So I look at the new release. I search by new release, each new release date. And then I read the little blurbs about the books and try to connect that with what I know our patrons like and what I think they ought to read. It's a combination of both. My graduate degree is, I'm not a librarian. My graduate degree is in English. So I tend towards the more literary. And right now I have to answer the phone, so I'm done.
Thank you. And I actually wanted to carry on to another question we have that Terry made me think of when you were mentioning indie authors, which is so great you include them in your library. The majority of the authors in my book club are indie authors. So on both sides of the coin there, I have a lot of indie authors who tend to ask, how do I get my books in a library? And I also have readers who are reading along during the month saying, you know, how would I get their books in the library so I could read along too that way? So what would you give for suggestions for authors and members and readers?
Well, if a patron suggests a book that they would like, I think I usually order it. You know, our budget is okay and I don't get those requests very often. But if an author wants to get her book into the library, their book into the library, I would suggest them giving a copy of it, donating a copy of it, only because I probably am not, unless I've seen it in a review, unless it's been reviewed and has really good reviews, I won't know about that book. So I'm not going to want to spend money on it unless I know. But if an author comes and donates a book, then, or donates to do a program perhaps, you know, come and talk about their book and then do a book signing, that would be how I would go about it. Because there's just too many books out there. I get letters all the time from authors, but I don't know anything about the book. And I just throw them away. So either making a personal contact, coming in and saying that you'd like to donate the book, I will put it on the shelf. And I'll definitely do a program if you're interested in that.
I like that idea, donate, because we don't necessarily have the budget. I would make a decision though about whether or not to put it on the shelf. I'd probably review the book myself or look for other people who have reviewed it. If you have any beta readers, for example, as you're writing it, have them write a note and say what they like about it.
Pretty much the same in Cobleskill. The other thing that we've started doing is we put a bright green neon sticker on the spine that says local author, or if it's a book that's local interest, we put that on there so that they pop out. They don't tend to circulate as well. So we've had a lot of conversation about you know, is there a way to sort of highlight them, you know, maybe have a bookshelf or a bookcase that is specific for, you know, local authors or indie authors. Right now, we don't have the space for that. Perhaps when we expand, there might be the opportunity for that. But right now, you know, like Terry said, donations as well as programs also help one with circulating the item. Because if we have it beforehand, you know, we can have it out and on display along with, you know, the program coming up, and then you can just sort of build interest around the author in the book.
Oh, thank you. That was all really great.
I just want to say one more thing. Don't send an email and expect me to buy your book from your email.
Yeah. Okay.
Delete.
That's a really great suggestion to let authors know, because I think maybe, you know, they don't know the avenue and might try that just because it's the easiest way to say, oh, hey, you know, check me out, here I am. So I really appreciate all of that information. I think that's going to help a lot of indie authors.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of mass emails going out from authors.
Yeah, that's a good point. They probably do just kind of sit and, because social media is very overwhelming for an author, for everybody sometimes. So I can assume they probably do just kind of sit and say, okay, let's make this email, send it to as many people as I can. But it does show, like, especially with libraries, I think that personal touch of letting them know who you are, that can make a big difference. And I'm really glad that that was some advice you guys gave. That was really cool.
I have something to say. I don't order the books for our library, but I do arrange meet the author events, and those really are a great way for the authors to connect with their audience, to connect with the library. And they usually do donate their book to the library, but then they bring books to sign And once people have heard them read the excerpt and talk about their process, people are very excited to line up and and purchase those books. So we love to have authors, I mean, it's, you know, mostly local authors come in and talk about their books and sign them.
And that was great. And I know I've gotten to attend some author events through the Schoharie Library, which I love the meet and greets, even with our featured book of the month authors. So fantastic. And it has me wondering too, it just made me think of a question. So in the age we're in now, with how the world is, I know libraries are going back and forth between maybe virtual programming and in-person programming. So along that same line, in general, like for maybe author programs, writing programs, how far does your reach go now? And what would you suggest? Like maybe there's an indie author that would like to contact you from another state or something and work with you and do a program. How would that work for somebody in today's world?
We've actually done that even before the pandemic. We had a writing workshop, and we hosted, in addition to our local presenters, we had Elizabeth Bear, who's a fantasy author from Massachusetts, joined us on Zoom, and we had a big screen, and that was really fun. We also had a virtual book launch for the same authors, Niamh Schmid and Becca Schmid, who are being featured now, and that was really fun. And there were people from literally all over the world, including the UK and Chile, coming to that program. So that was really fabulous. And we now have an indie author from Boston in our writing group, and we would very much like to have her do a virtual book signing. And the way that can work is if they're able to get a bunch of books to the library in advance, and a bunch of signed copies of the books in advance, or take orders for it in advance. And so that then people can pick those up at the library, and then they can either watch the Zoom at home, or we can put it on the big screen at the library. But that is a way it can work. But it helps to have established a good connection already with the library, or with some patrons, or with our writing group. Because yeah, there's so many out there, you know, you have to target to the people in your area who will actually be interested in that particular genre or style of writing.
Thank you. Did anyone else have anything to add to that?
We don't do much virtual, and we haven't, largely because most of our patrons don't have access to the internet. Broadband access is very limited out here, and my technological skills are limited as well. So the combination of those two, plus we've been open. We don't really flaunt COVID requirements, but we're careful. We still wear masks. We still ask for 6 feet. We still have a big shield in front of the desk, but we are not as strict about in-person meetings. We have had those with the proper restrictions.
Thank you. And Terry and Kim, did you have anything you wanted to add on that subject at all, or?
I think that the virtual environment is really great for authors. I mean, way before COVID, we had a couple of authors who did, you know, they were expensive authors. It would have been really expensive to have them here at the library, but they did virtual meet and greets with our patrons. And so I think it's great. And I think that would be a tool for indie authors, you know, from across the country. You know, why not? I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
I agree. It's a great idea to embrace the virtual opportunity.
Thanks. I love that. And I have a member question from actually an author in our group. She wrote a book called Trusting the Currents. And she's actually kind of done some work for libraries and was selected by a library journal for a program. So she loves libraries, and she wanted to say, her name is Linda Polio. And she said, I want to find her question in all of her information here. Sorry, to get her wording correctly. So she's interested in hearing how today's librarians see what libraries can become and how authors can support that vision. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
So I'm not a librarian, but I'll jump in quickly because being a programming person, my perspective might be slightly different, but I feel like I think that libraries can become kind of a community center and a community cultural center. So dovetailing with the books, also bringing people in to learn things, experience things, enjoy things, make things, become creators as well as listeners and readers and experiencers. And I think that authors can help to support that by just really staying connected with their local libraries and, you know, reaching out further. We have had just some wonderful programs from authors, and, you know, both virtually and in person, who have done all kinds of different things, whether they come in and they read their children's book to the kids and have an activity with them, or do a writing workshop where they may be talking about writing and it may have to do with their process, or they may be talking about writing in a different way that comes from helping people to explore their hearts and their own experiences. We also had Colleen Parator as another local author who came and talked with us about that kind of thing, along with our most recent Dr. Elaine Handley. So there are so many ways that authors can support and bring vitality and vibrance into the library environment, and kind of go beyond reading to a full creative experience, that where, you know, books and writing are a foundation, and then there's more life experience that can come in.
Thank you. That was great. Did anyone else have anything to add?
I think I missed the question. I'm sorry. I'm hooked back in now.
No need to be sorry. One of our members had wanted to know, she's interested in hearing how today's librarians see what libraries can become and how authors can support that vision.
Oh, wow. Well, libraries, our library is generally considered a community center. And I think, yes, what I did manage to hear, authors coming in, presenting programs, wonderful idea. Perhaps they've learned something special in their own quest to learn how to write, and maybe they'd like to share that. They could run a session on how to write whatever they've learned how to write. So anything like that, yeah, just come in and participate.
Thank you. And Terry or Kim, did you have anything? It's okay if you don't. Those are great answers. And it seemed to go along the same line too, like participate, offer, you know, your information and make yourself a part of things. I think that's a great answer. I did want to talk about other programming a little more in depth with the Sharon Springs Library. You were talking about your short story workshop. And then you've also started, I think you're going to have it annually, right? Your short story contest as well.
We're probably looking at twice a year. Board said that was a great idea. Let's do it again in the winter. So I think come December, I will be promoting that again. We learned a lot from the first time, which was just a matter of somebody had given us a Kindle and said, hey, that'd make a great prize. What for? Well, let's write. And somebody we're talking to won that Kindle. And she's smiling now. Yeah, very good writer. And so one of the things we learned, we had a youth, a young person decide to submit, even though we hadn't established categories. I don't think we even specifically said short story. I don't know. It's just a writing concept. Maybe it's a short story. So then there were some things that leaned a little more towards, you know, personal narrative, creative nonfiction kinds of things. So it made it very hard to make any kind of judgments. So I think we're going to probably define some categories a little more clearly, but look for that before Christmas.
Thank you. I love that. And that's perfect that you brought up you had a youth enter. Can I ask how old? Because I just love, even the writers we're featuring in the book club now, they started writing so young. And I love seeing the support of just youth, who want to write and starting that early, and having the support from local libraries like that.
Well, it was a child of one of the other entrants. I don't exactly remember. I could look it up, but it was somewhere between 10 and 12, I think. And he really did quite a good job.
I love that. I know even a lot of the book club members know my daughter Gemma, like you guys do too, because she's in some of the videos with me. So when I participated in that, we actually sat down together. I think you might have heard when I was talking about it in the interview for the paper. Before I wrote, we sat down and we made mind maps of what does spring mean to you, because that was the category. So like I got to pull her into that experience, and she had asked me, she's like, can I submit a story too? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember seeing an age, but if you want to write one, you can. So I love seeing that something like that can add that excitement for any age. So I really love that you do that. And I wanted to ask libraries what you're, in general, like what are things that you love to see happen that support writing or reading in general, like in your programs? Like what do you see excite the members that you are able to give them?
I think for the little ones, their first library card is like the most exciting thing to see, so proud to be able to hold that library card. So, I think some parents, I think, are also a little hesitant to give youngsters a card. And I think that that should change, because just the excitement and the enthusiasm for books and, getting people or getting children interested early on, I think is, one of the most precious things that you see happen in the library.
I'd say adult programming is always challenging. We have a regular book discussion, and one of the things that just evolved here was that I know what most of our patrons like. It's not necessarily what I like. And when I inherited the job, it was, okay, you run the book club, run the book discussion. And I said, I don't even want to read that book. So, but what evolved was the people who suggest the next book or choose it will lead the discussion. And that's actually turned into something that people have grown a little bit. They may be, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And we're very supportive. We're like, okay, don't worry about it. If you have questions, we'll help you. We'll ask them. We'll keep the discussion going. And that has worked out well for everybody, I think.
And of course, I think story time is a great cornerstone of getting people excited about books and reading and loving the library and just getting connected with each other in the library. And that's important to all of us, I know, very much. And of course, at Schoharie, our writers group they are just really excited about it, I have to say. And it's interesting because during the pandemic, when we had to just go right on Zoom, the writing club went from twice a month to every week. And having it go every week was amazing, because people just, when that everybody's going to want to hear what happened next, it's a lot of motivation to keep writing. And so it has changed the dynamic. And we've been able to have people who wouldn't be able to make it otherwise. And so it's expanded. So that's another really, I just can't say enough about how when libraries do foster a writing group, and really put attention into it, how much people can get excited about that.
Thank you. That was all great. And I wanted to say hi to Yvonne. Hi. Thanks for joining. I would love if you have a minute to give your introduction, so you can let us know the library you work for, and you can give any shout outs in the library if you'd like, other workers or anything. If your favorite titles of books and authors, if you like to write.
Hi, sorry about being late. I had no water at home this morning, so it's been a Monday. So I'm from Schoharie Library. I think I know almost everyone on the call, and Jenny is our program director. And in fairness, I've only been here since September. Well, July, August as interim. So Jenny has a lot more idea about how the programs have functioned during the pandemic, because she is the programs at our library. So shout out to her. Appreciate you, Jenny. I've been listening. I typically like to read, but I don't really have a whole lot of time for it lately. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks on Libby just to, keep up to date. And I'm currently on a Lisa Wingate kick. So I guess if I should get more involved in Jenny's writing group, because I would like to write more.
In all your spare time.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't had a whole lot of that lately.
Oh, thank you for your intro. And I love where you popped in on this, because it made me think of, with your intro, you have come into working at this library during the pandemic going on. And I think has everybody else here, you've been there since before. So what is that like to come into the world the way it is now, and working with libraries and communities?
Well, I've spent the last 20 years in education, and I spent the last 2 years in a high school building during COVID, some through the quarantines and everything. So like being here is mild in comparison. I really don't know how else to put it. I'm very used to all the hybrid programming or teaching, like you're recording yourself and you're monitoring the chat and you're teaching a room full of kids. So to me, it's like, wow, we could do both at the same time, can't we? But I think Jenny's like, yeah, not so much. I'm not that good. Not that you're not that good. It's just I've had way too much practice balancing those things for a year and a half when I had no library program because of COVID. So I'm glad to be doing library stuff again. And yeah, it's always been a dream of mine to write a book. So maybe in a few years when my kids are a little older, then I could start writing again.
That's something I hear a lot too. Like a lot of the indie authors in my book club, some of them said, I've held on to this dream for years, raised my kids. Now I've written my book and I'm published, so I think as long as you keep the dream alive and take notes along the way. So when you get to that point, you're like, okay, I want this character to do that, right? Keep it going. And I love that. So we were talking about how to, like, your libraries and programs you offer, excite readers and authors. And I know we hadn't gotten to hear from Terry yet. So I didn't know if you still had anything you wanted to say on that, because I know I attend all of these libraries. I love you guys so much. I love the things you all offer, such individual, exciting things for the community. And growing up, where I grew up in a very small town by the Canadian border, my library was great. The people there were great, but they never offered activities and events. So I love to see the different things you guys offer. So I don't know if you wanted to, mention any of the specific things that you do that you see readers or writers get excited about. Terry or Yvonne, if you want to jump in.
Well, I just wanted to say that I agree with Kim and Jenny. So little ones getting their library card is so exciting. And I think story time has been the place where a lot of kids have been introduced to the library. And because they've had a good experience, they continue to be library users. And I mean, I really think that that's what we're trying to do besides getting them interested in reading and language, is to get them to feel at home in the library and excited about coming here. So, you know, in the future, they'll still be using the library. That's it.
Love it. Yvonne, did you want to add anything?
Well, I know in times of COVID, I had Head Start reach out, and I've talked to the elementary principal at our school. And I'm like, what can we do to bridge the gap? Since I can't come to you, you can't come to me. And this weekend we shot a promo video so the little ones can be introduced to it, and then maybe they'll come on their own. Story time definitely does help. But as for any other programs, I again defer to Jenny.
But you've also been working on getting the teens more involved in the library too. And that's a big thing, because I feel like we start losing those kids when they hit junior high, and there are so many other activities competing for their attention. So I think it's really valuable. And I give a huge shout out to anyone who's working on keeping kids engaged past the age of 10 or 12.
That is such a good point, like how their interests will change for how they'll want to attend the library. And that's another question too, with being virtual and in person. How are you all reaching out in general, like so that people maybe in virtual programs can see what you're doing, or in person, like for kids to come? What do you suggest as a good way for people to find you and find activities going on for each age group?
Social media.
So probably a good suggestion for members like who want to be more active in their libraries, or maybe even finding virtual events at other libraries. Should they start kind of just searching the libraries on Facebook kind of thing? What would you suggest?
Yeah, Facebook pages, library websites, and then we also have wonderful newspapers here who very kindly publish our library news for free. And so you can look in the newspaper too. I know that's not such a thing for the younger folks, but that's how our senior citizen patrons find out what's going on. But yeah, if you just Google the library, you'll see all kinds of things that come up.
This has been so great. I think there's been so much wonderful information for readers and for writers. So I just wanted to end it off. If anyone wants to give any kind of final thoughts that maybe we didn't bring up in topics that could be helpful for readers or writers, or just anything you want to add in, that would be fantastic. Did we pretty much well cover?
I would just add one thing for indie authors. You may want to look at making sure that your book is available as an audiobook. I know that there's been quite a push towards audiobooks for indie authors. You know, as our library system uses Libby through the Overdrive platform, and there is a indie author section on that. So, you know, I would encourage that, you know, that would give more exposure for some folks.
Thank you so much. You guys are fantastic people. You have fantastic libraries. I know you make my daughter and I and Grandma comes with us to stuff very happy. We love everything you do. Thank you so much for being here and answering these questions and talking with us for my book club group. This has been fantastic, and I know everyone's going to love this amazing information that you've given. Thank you so much for your time for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you for doing it.
Heather.